Driving examiners, the people we love to hate and blame for failing a driver's test. However, these are the gatekeepers. I'm going to give you strategies and tips to pass your driver's test first time. We're dealing with crusty old driving examiners, the gatekeepers, whose job is to determine whether you're going to pass or fail your driver's test. Their job is to determine whether you have due care and control of the vehicle in changing traffic conditions. In other words, are you responding? Are you reading traffic patterns, interpreting what individual road users are doing, and responding accordingly? You're not reacting, you're not being a crazy person, and you're not doing things that are potentially dangerous on the roadway. Important stuff to have a look at: mastering shoulder checks, the number one mistake that drivers make on a driver's test. And I have had many students come back over the years and say they were unsuccessful on their driver's test because they didn't shoulder check, and they hadn't ever heard about it. Nobody had said to them that they need to shoulder check when they're making left turns, right turns, or changing directions of the vehicle. And I know there are many people out there that will make it complicated. Just keep it simple. KISS. The KISS principle. Keep it simple, smart guy. Okay, shoulder check every time you change directions of the vehicle. Signal every time you change directions of the vehicle going forward and in reverse. And that will ensure that you not only pass a driver's test, but after getting your license will be a safer, smarter driver. And the top 4 skills, have a look for that as well. Corey put up the video there for shoulder checking. He'll also put up the playlist for you for the most important skills that you must have for passing a driver's test and being a safer, smarter driver. As I said in the introduction, the driving examiner's job is to assess your ability to have due care and control of the vehicle in changing traffic conditions. So during your driver's test, it's not likely that you're going to go out on a freeway or an interstate, but you are going to go into a suburb. You're going to be in busy city traffic on a multi-lane road. You're going to make right and left turns at complex intersections. You're going to do parallel parking, backing into a parking space, and 3-point turns. Except for the states that I mentioned, Ohio, California, and Maryland, you're going to do different maneuvers. California is a little more difficult because you have to back along a curb for 50 feet. And Corey will put up that video for you on backing along a curb for 50 feet and know how to do that. And it's a little tougher than you think. And the strategy for being able to do that successfully, you need to stay out about 3 feet, 1 meter from the curb, so you have some wiggle room so that you can maneuver the steering wheel as you're backing straight up. Because even though we'd like to think that backing up in a straight line for 50 feet is a static exercise, that basically you can point the car in the direction you want it to go, hold the steering wheel, you can't do that. You do have to move and manipulate the steering wheel a little bit as you're backing up. Your job on a driving test is to take away the examiner's right to fail you. Nothing less, nothing more. That's all you need to do. First impression showing up for a driver's test. If you haven't cleaned out or vacuumed out the inside of your car in some time, take the time, couple of days before your driver's test, vacuum it all out, give it a wash. And as well, you have a shower, put on some nice clothes, because if you show up and you look like you slept in your clothes and you hadn't combed your hair in 10 days, it makes a first impression and it's not going to go well. So know that first impressions. We had a driving examiner here in Vernon when I was teaching truck driving. And if we had students who had piercings and tattoos, there was a driving examiner there who was ex-military, and they had a hard time of it when they went down for their driver's test. They're people, they have biases, and they unfortunately judge people, and it's going to be a bit difficult for you if you just look like you just rolled out of bed, all right, on your driver's test. So you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Myths about driving examiners. And driving instructors are the worst in terms of putting forth and perpetuating these myths. You can't wear sunglasses. It's not true, okay? You can wear sunglasses. If you are like me and find it very difficult to see when it is sunny out, you need to wear sunglasses so that you're not squinting when you're driving. Don't engage in conversation with the examiner. If you're 2/3 of the way through your test and the examiner engages in some conversation with you, then yes, engage in some conversation. But let the driving examiner initiate that conversation, okay? Work to fail you, okay? They work to judge you fairly and objectively as possible. Examiners have a quota of the number of people that they need to fail. That is not true either, okay? If you are prepared and you can drive well and you can drive safely you are going to pass your driver's test. I have to speak English perfectly. No, you don't have to speak English perfectly, but at the next intersection, make a left, come to a stop. I want you to parallel park. You need to understand basic instructions. Examiners are unfair? No. Most examiners, 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, 9.8%, 98% of driving examiners are doing an excellent job in the job that they're doing every day, and they're marking you as fairly as possible. The vehicle, pre-trip inspection. Make sure that you do a pre-trip inspection on your vehicle before going down. I have had students over the years that have showed up with an expired registration. Their insurance is not valid. License plates missing on the front of the vehicle. For example, there was a student who was denied their driver's test because they borrowed their uncle's car from Alberta. Here in Canada, where I live, they don't have to have front license plates in Alberta. However, they showed up for a driver's test and the driving examiner said they couldn't go out because they didn't have a front license plate. These types of things. So brake lights, for example, if you have a brake light out, it's very easy to fix if you can wield a screwdriver. So be sure to do a pre-trip inspection. And I'm talking to the driving instructors as well, that if you're working for a school and the student is going down with you in the car, make sure that you do a pre-trip inspection prior to the student showing up for the test. Don't just assume that everything on the vehicle works. Know and double check. So do a pre-trip inspection. Have a look at these two videos. I believe Corey's put them up in the playlist. Must know skills for your driver's test. So most common mistakes, top 10 automatic fails on your driver's test. Shoulder checking. I cannot stress this enough. This is the most common cause. Now, if you Google it and you go to Gemini or go to ChatGPT or any of these other AI, they will tell you that it's rolling through stop signs. That's not true. Okay? I've been doing this for a very long time. I'm a driving instructor. I've been fielding questions. I've been talking to students. They come back. They tell me the reasons that they've been unsuccessful on their driver's test. Not shoulder checking, not observing correctly. Okay? Not shoulder checking is to driving is the same as somebody picking up a loaded gun and not checking to see whether it's loaded before using it. Okay? Why on any planet would you move a 2-ton vehicle at speed, change directions, and not look into the blind areas around your vehicle to check and see whether there are other road users? Imagine how terrible you would feel if you hit a pedestrian, you hit a cyclist, you hit a kid on an e-scooter. Shoulder check, shoulder check. I cannot stress this enough. Not only will it ensure that you pass your driver's test first time, but it is the most critical skill to being a safer, smarter driver. And shoulder checking left, shoulder checking right. And this ties into ABS. Always be scanning, always be reading traffic patterns, and always interpreting the actions of individual road users on the roadway. Okay, 3 to 4 second following distance, stopping back in traffic, 1 vehicle length. Your landmark for that is being able to see the tires of the vehicle in front, making clear contact with the roadway. Okay, you cannot adjust your mirrors when you're parallel parking. I mean, some vehicles, you can set it up in the settings that when you put the vehicle into reverse and start to back up, the mirrors will adjust automatically. If you have one of those high-tech vehicles, that's awesome. But the driving examiner is not going to wait 30 seconds, a minute, or a minute and a half, however long it takes you to adjust the mirrors before you parallel park. And as well, if your vehicle is fitted with technology, proximity sensors, convex mirrors, backup sensors, or backup cameras, and those types of things, they're just a backup to good driving skills. So do your scanning observations and your scanning and your observation checks before you change directions of the vehicles. Okay. Practice in and around the test center where you're going to be taking your test at the time that you're going to be taking your test, okay? Failing to adjust your speed according to signs is an action contrary to a regulatory sign, because speed signs are regulatory signs. The root word of regulatory is regulation. It is the law. You must do it. Okay, lane end signs. Figure out where the merges are, the bottlenecks, the choke points, the school zones. If you are taking your test at 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning and school is in session, there will be school speed zones in place. Speeding in a school speed zone is an automatic fail on a driver's test, okay? Pay attention to road markings. It is prohibited to cross over solid white lines. If you cross over a solid white line, you're probably going to be assigned 5 to 10 demerit points. I worked with another driving examiner, and his pet peeve on a driving test with students was solid white lines, and they're at intersections and crosswalks. You're prohibited from changing lanes at solid white lines. Slow speed maneuvers, okay? Turning, parking, and maneuvering the vehicle in tight spaces, parking lots and residential streets where there's cars parked on both sides. And if you're in any of the boroughs in New York City, it's going to be very tight for you to be driving along these roadways. So you're going to have to maneuver these places. And yes, you can go below the posted speed limit if you're on your driver's test. Okay, parking through point turns, the K turn or the Y turn as it's also called. And as I mentioned previously, 20% in, 80% out. So do your slow speed maneuvers first, your figure eights, your backing into a parking space, your 2-point reverse turns, your 3-point turns. Do all of this first, go out, drive around, figure out the road rules, how to handle 2-way stop signs and 4-way stop signs and the difference between those different stop signs. The 4-way stop signs always have that small rectangular white sign underneath that says all-way or 4-way or 3-way, okay? Those are all the same and handled the same, and Corey will put up the playlist on stop signs for you to get that information. Lane positioning, move to the right lane after turning left. So if you're on a multi-lane road and you're turning left at the intersection, you have to move back to the right lane. And the reason you move back to the right lane, every state has move right unless passing. So you have to drive in the right lane because you are going to be the slowest person on the roadway because you are driving the posted speed limit, not keeping up with traffic flow. You must, for the purposes of a driver's test, drive the posted speed limit. Okay, left lane to left lane when you're turning at intersections, merging and moving the vehicle laterally effectively with other traffic on the roadways. The driving examiner's job is to assess competency. Are you safe to drive on the roadways, and are you not a danger to other people, other road users on the roadway? Pass, fail. Most driving test centers, except New York State, as we talked about previously, will give you feedback right away. They'll give you points to work on. Now, on that note, if you're not successful on your driving test and the examiner says to you, oh, you failed because you rolled through 3 stop signs, keep in mind that they'll have a limited amount of time to give you why you were not successful on your driver's test. But they will give you 1 or 2 major things to work on, and you need to work on those 1 or 2 things. So know that unfortunately, if you are complaining about why you failed your driver's test and you come back and you say, I failed my driver's test because of this, that wasn't the only reason that you failed your driver's test. Good luck in your driver's test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. So we're talking about driving examiners. We're talking about how you could be successful in passing your driver's test. They are going to mark you. They're going to assign demerits for minor and major errors on your driver's test. As I mentioned previously, there's 2 ways to fail your driver's test. You can fail outright with an automatic fail, or you can accumulate too many demerits. And too many demerits, most driving tests is 35 points. If you get 35 points, you're going to be unsuccessful on your driver's test. Now, most people do not have an automatic fail on their driver's test. Even if you roll through a stop sign, the examiner is going to say, okay, probably major points, but you're not going to fail outright for rolling through a stop sign. But know that, and after a couple of lessons or watching some videos on social media, you're going to know that you have to come to a complete stop at a stop sign intersection for the purposes of a driver's test. After that, most people do not come to a complete stop at a stop sign when they're driving after they get their driver's license, and it's called social driving. On the note of social driving, that is the way that everybody drives after they get their license. They speed, they follow too close, they talk on their cell phones, they drive over painted islands, they don't come to a complete stop at stop sign intersections. You cannot drive the way that everybody else drives on the roadway. And I had a smart driver some weeks ago come back and says, oh, I'm a good driver and I'm 2-footing it. So in other words, they're using their left foot on the brake and they're using their right foot on the accelerator, and they're what's called 2-footing it, right? You can't 2-foot it on a driver's test and be successful. The examiner will not pass you because 2-footing it in an automatic transmission is considered dangerous. And there have been many, many newspaper reports of people driving through shops and whatnot and making them into a drive-through where there shouldn't be a drive-through because they mixed up the gas and the brake. In a manual transmission, the left foot is for the clutch, okay? Your right foot is for the accelerator and the brake. And so you can't 2-foot it. And if your family members are saying, oh, that's fine, you do what you want, you're not going to be successful on a driver's test, and you're going to have to break that habit. And this is some of the challenges about students who get misinformation or incorrect information. Sometimes it takes longer than if you just go to a driving instructor initially, because the driving instructor has to undo what you already learned and then put in the right procedures for you to be able to do that. And the video with Jen, who had eyesight not deteriorated, but eyesight, and she had to go back and do another driver's test, she always put her hand on the inside of the steering wheel when she was turning. And this is another habit that a lot of drivers form, is they'll put their hand on the inside of the steering wheel. You can't do that on a driver's test. You have to keep your hands on the outside of the steering wheel. And 2 hands on the steering wheel for the duration of the driver's test. And most places in the world are all going to be hand over hand. So you can do hand over hand. The hands can cross, okay? There are some places, not very many, where it's hand to hand. So you do this kind of thing. Or another driving instructor likes to call it milking the cow, where you're doing this thing. Hand to hand is goofy and it's slow. There's no reason you can't cross your hands. And you can let the wheel spin back. You just open your fingers, keep your palms in contact with the steering wheel, and let it spin back after the turn. You don't have to manually correct it to come back after making a turn on a driver's test. All these pieces will come together. I know it's a lot. Thing is not complicated. It's just 3,227 little things, oftentimes in sequential order. But with a bit of practice and some time behind the wheel, you will be able to do it. Now, the other piece about this is driving is not a spectator sport. You cannot watch other people drive on videos and learn how to do it. You have to get in the car and you have to physically drive the vehicle to figure out the response of the accelerator, how the brakes are going to work, what's going to happen when you turn the steering wheel, and all the other things that happen when you're driving. You need to experience them. You have to be sitting in the wheel and physically experience it. Practice in and around the test center where you're going to be taking your test, to be able to identify those intersections where you can make right turns at red lights. You can identify where the school speed zones are going to be, and anything that may be peculiar on your driver's test that may cause you to fail. I've talked about this story before. When we were testing in Victoria, British Columbia, there was a left turn that was part of the driving test route. You went around on the left turn, and then about a half a block up was a school speed zone sign, but there was no school. It was a hedge and buildings. The school was on the next block, so it backed onto that street, but you couldn't see it. And more than one student missed that sign, despite us saying over and over and over again to students, watch for the school speed zone line. It's in effect when school is in session. Number of students still, despite that warning, despite driving lessons, failed the driver's test because of that. And this is why it's important you can practice in at the test center. Don't go in when they're working and during business hours, but go in the off hours, and you can practice in and around the test center to be fully prepared for your driver's test. Good luck in your driver's test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. All the best.